This is Matthew Cratter's Bitcoin University. Today we're talking about Bitcoin 71,000. Bitcoin has really taken off in the last 12 hours, moving through 68,000, 69,000, 70,000, now trading above 71,000, just 3.5% below its all-time high of 73,790. Now is a good time to look back and remember when people said that Bitcoin was just a ZERP phenomenon, a phenomenon caused by a zero interest rate policy. People said the only reason that Bitcoin was trading so high was because interest rates were at zero and that Bitcoin would implode if rates ever went back up. Obviously, rates have been much, much higher for the past 2 or 3 years. And even now with the Fed in what appears to be a cutting cycle, we've seen interest rates move back up, and now the entire yield curve, the entire US Treasury yield curve is trading above 4% all the way across from 1 month all the way out to 30 years. And we've also seen something interesting in the past couple weeks since the middle of September. We've seen the 10-year note yield. So the US Treasury, the 10-year note, we've seen yields move from under 3.7% to over 4.3%. So quite a large move upwards in yields, and a bit unusual in a Fed cutting cycle. But again, we're looking out further on the yield curve here. But as those interest rates have been backing up, we've actually seen Bitcoin rallying into it, which is another quite interesting thing to see. As Bitcoin approaches new all-time highs, are old friends calling you and asking about buying Bitcoin? For me, it's been crickets. No one's really been contacting me outside the Bitcoin space. And this looks to line up with Google Trends, which shows very, very low interest in Bitcoin as its search term. This compares to the very high interest we saw at the various bull market peaks back in 2021. So this really suggests that the bull move is probably still on its very early stages. At this point, it's really only the central bankers who are panicking and realizing what is coming. We talked about how the ECB thinks that Bitcoin could go to $10 million per coin. I'll put a link to that in the description notes below. And then we have this foreshadowing coming with the US Treasury. I'll play this so you can hear it.
And over a longer time horizon, how concerned are you about the potential impact of the dollar's status as the world's reserve?
So that's the US Treasury sign falling off as the reporter's asking Janet Yellen about the state of the US dollar as a global reserve currency. I thought that was pretty funny to see the look on her face. Meanwhile, for altcoiners, shitcoiners, it's been a terrible alt season so far. Shitcoins are just completely stuck in the mud, and shitcoiners are struggling to stay relevant. We have Cardano founder Charles Hoskinson here talking about how Cardano is not just going to flip Bitcoin, but it's going to flip everything in the world. I'll play it.
In 7 years' time since Cardano launched, we went from nothing to an 11-figure network with millions of people and the largest research group in the world and the passion of the young people. And in another decade's time, we'll be larger than Ethereum. And in another decade's time, we'll be larger than Bitcoin. And in another decade's time, the majority of governments in the world will run on our infrastructure because they trust it.
No, Charles, this is never going to happen. First of all, because Cardano is fading away into irrelevance, and absolutely no one trusts you or this protocol. It looks like since he made that speech, there's been a bit of a flip. Founder of Cardano, Charles Hoskinson, just reversed his stance on Bitcoin and announced that Cardano Layer 1 is pivoting to become a Bitcoin Layer 2. Looks like the market doesn't really believe this is significant. Cardano selling off even more on the news. It's been a disastrous few months for Cardano, going down this entire bull market against Bitcoin. I like Callie's comment here. So you're telling me that your quote-unquote decentralized shitcoin can pivot from being its own shitcoin to being a Bitcoin Layer 2, and you still call it decentralized. Anyway, this is pretty irrelevant. It's not going to happen, but we are seeing the sell-off of all the alts against Bitcoin. We can see XRP here hitting new lows for the move against Bitcoin. And then ETH, as Predator points out here, ETHBTC is depreciating faster than a new car, keeps hitting new lows almost every day. Meanwhile, Vitalik is scrambling to reduce Ethereum's bloat in the purge upgrade of his roadmap. It's funny how decentralized protocols can have a roadmap, but anyway, this is the dumpster fire that is Ethereum. Meanwhile, we're continuing to see very large flows into the Bitcoin, the US spot Bitcoin ETFs, and we can see how the flows just keep increasing. IBIT now holding over 400,000 Bitcoin. And Emory University, the first endowment to report a position in a Bitcoin ETF, owning almost $16 million worth of Bitcoin. They're holding it in the form of a Grayscale Bitcoin mini trust. And I think eventually these endowments will figure out it's much better to hold BTC itself, and that's what you and I should do. But this is still quite significant news, being the first endowment to be investing in Bitcoin. Meanwhile, Van Eck has some very, very bullish predictions for Bitcoin. I'll put a link to this in the description notes below, but the basic summary is $3 million per coin. Bitcoin by 2050, Bitcoin becomes a reserve asset used to settle global trade. Central banks, and this is a very conservative prediction, central banks will have just 2% of their assets in it. That's a 16% annual compound rate, going from $71,000 Bitcoin here to $3 million Bitcoin. So it's actually quite conservative when you consider Bitcoin's historical rate of appreciation. And even with really conservative assumptions like central banks still having just 2% of their assets in it, $3 million Bitcoin by 2015. And I think there's another interesting part of this interview I want to play for you. But first, let's compare that price target to Michael Saylor's various cases: bear case, base case, and bull case. It looks like Van Eck's case lines up with the bear case, which is $3 million Bitcoin by 2045. And that's a 21% appreciation rate from when this graphic was made. Base case, $13 million per Bitcoin. So if you think you're too late to Bitcoin, you're still quite early. The continuation of this Van Eck interview I wanted to play because it's very significant when it comes to what's happening with various BRICs countries.
Yeah, it's a non-U.S. asset. It's an emerging markets asset. And while we were all hyperventilating about the election over the last week, BRICS had a conference in Russia. There's 6 new members of BRICS this year. So BRICS GDP is now greater than the combined GDP of G7. Of the 6 new members, 3 of them, Argentina, the UAE, and Ethiopia, are now mining Bitcoin with government resources. So there is tremendous urgency outside of the U.S. to find a way to circumvent the irresponsible fiscal policy that we've been running here in the U.S. In fact, Russia announced an initiative. Their sovereign wealth fund is going to invest in a regional initiative to build Bitcoin mining and AI infrastructure throughout BRICS, with an idea of settling global trade in Bitcoin. So look, someday, I don't know if it's 5 years, 10 years, Putin's going to die. We're going to look to reintegrate some of these countries into the world financial system, and they're going to be trading with Bitcoin. What are we going to be doing?
It would certainly be ironic if the whole BRICS project trends toward Bitcoin instead of towards gold, as many gold bugs believe. But this, I thought, was a quite interesting take, that Russia's sovereign wealth fund is investing in Bitcoin mining, and that the various members of BRICS are mining Bitcoin with government resources in a very official way. So Bitcoin, as its price moves up, continues to spread on the geopolitical stage. Finally, wanted to finish up with the beautiful statue of Satoshi Nakamoto that was just unveiled in Lugano. And depending how you walk around this, it's pretty much invisible when you're staring straight at it. And then as you move to the side, it begins to appear. So absolutely amazing sculpture. And it looks like a very beautiful location as well, right in Lugano. So hope to be able to visit this one of these days. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.